Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Marhaba. I'd first like to thank you for inviting me all the way from Manchester. I always enjoy coming to Turkey, and this time is no exception. I'd like to thank all those who have arranged my travel, excellent hosting, and I'm very, very impressed with this organization. Thank you. Now, why am I here? I was thinking of talking about my patents, my inventions in science and technology, being a professor of mechanical engineering for many years. But I was asked to talk about something else, which is really a hobby of mine, and I'll tell you that in a minute. When I sat down listening to Charles this morning and talking about NASA and his fascinating presentation, and I thought, my goodness, what am I going to say? Because his presentation was so good that it's be very, very difficult to actually match. Then I was wondering, I thought, right, now then, Charles originally comes from Beirut, and he left Beirut at about 17 years of age. I left Baghdad when I was 17 years of age. I went to the UK, he went to the United States, and we both became citizens, and I am British and he's American. Top of his profession, and I was really very, very proud to hear him speaking about us and this fascinating achievements. It's the apex of science and technology of humanity, because through NASA, through his lab, we are reaching out to Mars and so on. And then on in the car, if I may say, that he mentioned that there were about 5,000 engineers working there. Just 5,000 engineers working there. And then an idea came to me. I thought, actually, these are the engineers who are alive now, working in the jet propulsion. But what about all those engineers who, from the past, from 1,000 years until now, all have been innovating and making inventions, preparing us for today? The algebra, the chemistry, the physics, the biology, all the equations, all the discoveries that we all have accumulated and pushed forward from one civilization to the other until it has reached NASA, where they can. Right. Now, I often remembered Isaac Newton. He says, if I have seen more than others, because he was very highly recognized, he said, if I have seen more than others, it was because I was standing on the shoulders of giants. Right. So, my dear Charles and NASA, you are standing on the shoulders of giants. Thank you so much. But we do not want to forget about those great people, some of them who came from this area, from the Greeks, from Persia, from the Middle East. In fact, I'm going to show you something now which will dazzle you. You see, technology has always been used not only to serve mankind, not only to serve society. Unfortunately, it has also been used as a demonstration of power, right? So when you hold technology in your hand, and you can actually then use it to rule the world, that's how it has been all the time, unfortunately. Human beings are like that. They like to use technology not only to develop heart valves and, all these nice things, but also they use weapons, they use all sorts of other technologies to expand, to maintain their country, to prevent enemies from attacking it. And so it's all to do with that. And I remember Napoleon Bonaparte, when he came to Cairo, he brought some scientists and chemists with him. They went to the Al-Azhar University, Jami' Al-Azhar. And then they performed some chemical tricks, changing colors. One thing is white, and then suddenly by doing something to it, it becomes green. It was effectively demonstrating the technological power of France at that time. Now, this tells me that, well, let's see, is this true that technology has been used in this way? I'm going to show you a machine which is about 1,200 years old, right? This one. This is a clock, a huge clock, which we got out of manuscripts. And these manuscripts, like from Al-Ghazali and others, and manuscripts from France, is a present from Harun al-Rashid, the Caliph of Baghdad, to Charlemagne, the king of Europe, the one who really started Europe. And he sent him this together with a white, a nice small elephant, white in color, and a huge tent, big chador of silk. It took 3 years to go there. Anyway, and it really does show the power at that time, that there's such a sophisticated clock, which gives various parts working together in unison, and highly automated object, 1,200 years ago. So, I'd like to now go back to someone who has developed some interesting technology, who is from South Turkey. This guy. Right. Al-Jazari comes from near Diyarbakir, about the year 1206. This guy was a genius. It doesn't take much really to be a genius and to be innovative. He wanted to solve various problems. So one of the problems he solved is about suction. And he developed a double-acting reciprocating pump, which is what you see in here. We obtained this from his manuscript and analyzed it, made sure that it actually works, and then produced a film out of that. The other thing that he is famed to have developed was this device. Now, this device which he has actually developed is to make a connecting rod and a crank all together to convert rotary motion into a vertical motion. This is a piece of industrial invention that is in most cars, in trains, in aircrafts. You couldn't do technology, really, in engineering without this invention. So he has made a huge advance in that. He's developed this suction pump, then how it works inside. He also developed a fascinating clock, which we call the elephant clock. This elephant clock is a fascinating machine because it brings in technology from 5 different cultures. It brings in technology from India in the shape of Indian elephant. Bring in technology from China with these the Chinese dragons. It brings in technology from old Egypt, from the phoenix, and then and so on. So it is really a fascinating story, and it only comes not far away from here. This is another one, which is his boat clock, where it can actually it generates sound as well as it operates. And you'll see that there are robots there, and there is an automatic process where it will sort of generate motion and gives you an alarm, it gives you sound, and so on. And it really is, at that time, it is considered to be a great innovation. It's an invention. If they were patenting at that time, he would have been a very, very rich man. There is another one who originally was born in Syria, but he lived in Istanbul most of his life. He has developed this technology, and he made 6-cylinder engine. Those of you who know about how cars work, this is how it all started, in my view. This is 6-cylinder pump, has a crank shaft with connecting rods and 6 pumps. They are working in unison, and the manuscript is on the left-hand side. And this is developed by Taqiyuddin al-Rasid. He's also a great guy in other technologies. He developed this mechanical clock, which works on gravity. So this area is not strange to invention. It is actually part of the process of invention in humanity. There is another invention, which this is from a bit of a distance, from Granada. And there's a guy called Al-Zahrawi, Abul Qasim al-Zahrawi. I'm fascinated by this guy. I had a heart operation. And when I saw the heart valve in here, I was really very excited. This guy, Al-Zahrawi, more than 1,000 years ago, there was a problem in front of him, that women and the surgery in caesarean operation, they have to go through 2 operations. They first cut the abdomen, and then they cut the womb take the fetus, the baby out, stitch the womb, and then have to stitch the abdomen, wait for 3 weeks, because they have to go back to the thread, the suture that has done the stitching of the womb. They cut again, and they take the suture out so that it doesn't, become infectious. What he did, he has used the cat gut. Cat gut has been used ever since, until now, in surgical operations, particularly internal operations. It saved my life. It saves many people's lives. Because this cat gut, which is from the animal's guts, right, it dissolves after 3 weeks. You don't need to go back again to take it out. This discovery itself, if he had patented this, right, and continued with the patent, he will probably not only own Turkey, he would own the whole world, right? But I'm really amazed at these people, the great inventions and the other inventions that he did in terms of surgical operation, tools and so. Some of them are still used today in surgery. So then, not far away from here, down the south, his name is Al-Hassani Al-Rammah. This guy has actually, I got this picture from a manuscript, but it's also in the Smithsonian in Washington. They show this as being the first ever torpedo, right? Using pyrotechnics and gunpowder mixed to produce a propulsion, right? So you have a jet coming out of the end, and then the rudders steer the torpedo for motion. So it's just, again, it's really fascinating how people. Now, how did I come to get engaged in this hobby? What happened is a colleague of mine called Professor Donald Cardwell. He's the champion in that area, the area of history of science and industry. He came to see me and he said to me, look here, Salim, you're a very well-known professor. You have so many patents, hundreds of papers. You're probably the richest person in the university because we're doing a lot of consulting. I had 2 companies, engineering companies as well. And he said, look, what are you going to do with yourself? I said, what? What do you mean? He said, look, there is 1,000 years missing in our history of science, in our books in the schools, in physics and chemistry and so on. There is 1,000 years missing. We call this 1,000 years, we call it the Dark Ages, or we call it the Medieval Ages. It's a time between the Greeks and the European Renaissance. And that needs to be explored. I said, what do you want me to do? He says, that corresponds to your civilization. You're a Muslim and you're an Arab and all that and so on. So why don't you do something about it? I said, me do something about it? How can I do that? I hate history. He says, why do you hate history? I said, the history that I was taught was history of people killing each other when I was raised in Baghdad. How about, can you imagine, they taught me how Aqoyunlu and Karakoyunlu used to fight with each other. What am I to do with Aqoyunlu and Karakoyunlu, for God's sake? Right? And this king, hardly anybody, these kings and caliphs and so on, hardly anybody has died natural death. So I didn't want to do history. He says, no. What you have been taught was history of politics and history of religion. Right? When there is power and authority, humanity will always be fighting. What you should do, have a look at history of science and technology, and then come back and see me. I said, come on now. So I say, all right, I'm going to take his word. I went there and tried to look around and see whether is there such a story. I'll tell you what, I found this book, which is apparently at that time most popular at that time. That book, it tells you, it says underneath, scientists on the top, scientists and inventors. And it's underneath what it says, the people who made technology from the earliest times to the present day. How's that? Isn't that fantastic, isn't it? Right, let's just see. When you open the pages, it's a big book. You open the pages, every 2 pages in the name of a great inventor or innovator or a scientist. Right? It starts with Archimedes, page 14 and 15. Right? You see the date? 200 and something in BC. Next page. Can you see that? Next page. and then the next page, you know, there's a jump of 1,000, complete airbrush of the Chinese, of the Indians, of the Turks, of the Persians, of the, you know, it's just unbelievable. And then you go again to Leonardo da Vinci, and then all European. Now, what we did, say, okay, let's go and see and look at our physics books, chemistry books, right? Engineering, you know, maths and so on. You take the names of the people who are mentioned there, like Newton's law, Boyle's law, you know, Maxwell's law, all these, right, in the names, and the names of people, put them on a timeline, right? When they were born, and put them on a timeline. You'll find there is actually 1,000 years also missing. They will all conform to this graph. I have summarized it for you. That is what we have been taught. That's what I have been taught, and that's what you have been taught. Right? Because your books, until now, they're the same books as I have learned in England. However, isn't that incredible? What an incredible thing. I'm not saying this is a conspiracy. It just so happens. You know, something happened. I'm not blaming anybody. Please don't think. This is not politics. My organization is non-political, non-religious. It's purely about science, all right, and technology. But as I say, it just made me wonder. And I said, well, really, Donald, I'm going to do something about it. So I started talking to people, and then we started collecting information, and then we made a website. And this website started like a honey trap. Hundreds, in fact, even thousands of people were excited, and they wanted to get involved in this story. So, you know, in this 1,000 years missing, I'm not going to read names for you. There's 600 names mentioned in this slide that you have here. 600 names, male, female, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Sabian, Buddhist. They all fit in that period. And they're not only them, there are thousands of them. But these, if they were alive today, right, I'm sure NASA will celebrate them. They will honor them. And they will probably be honored by the Royal Society in London. Right? Now, select 40 of those, including women as well, Muslim and Jewish and Christian as well. Select. They would have been given Nobel Prizes today if they were alive because of their fantastic contributions to humanity, the improvement of the quality of life. Right? Now then, I've looked at Istanbul and see how East and West have used to exchange technology and so on. Those who are on the right, they come from Asia and so on. And those who are on the left, they are Europeans, from the Balkans and so on. And Istanbul was the hub of exchanging information, science, and technology and so on. No time to go into detail. But you see, this information is missing. You get people like mathematics. You know, how can you fly a rocket or a satellite to Mars without mathematics, without algebra, without numerals and so on? Then I'm not going to tell you a little story about something to do with jet propulsion as well, I think. But it starts a long time ago. I thought I'd better tell you this. This is called a Latin sail. You know this sail? You know, sailing? And this is the triangular sail. This triangular sail is called Latin sail. Why was it developed? Because this sail, by maneuvering it, it can actually steer against the wind. The square sail cannot do that. It will only go in the direction of the wind. Whilst this one, because of the way it curves, you can actually, by tilting and playing with your boat, you can go at an angle ahead of the wind. And then you go to another angle, and you can travel ahead of the wind. This was developed in the Gulf area, and then it went into the Mediterranean. And this is how they used to maneuver it. And because people cannot wait for the wind to flow from Asia to Africa, you need to find a way. Every 6 months you have to wait. Otherwise, you have to find a way of how to travel against the wind. And when Vasco da Gama came to South Africa and he wanted to go to India, he couldn't. Then they called upon a guy called Ibn Majid. Ibn Majid, he came because he was expert in this kind of road. He took him on the boat and he got him to India, traveling against the wind by using this technology. Now, what has this to do with us today? Well, my friends, is to do with the development of the aerofoil section. Because that curvature in that sail allows differential in pressure. When the faster wind over the curved surface has less pressure, the slower wind below on the other surface has higher pressure, and so it can generate a force. That is the technology that was used in aircraft. But not even in the aircraft. I'm excited. I like to have cars, and my children enjoy having cars, and they love they call it, what is it, Formula One? Right? Now, Formula One, that's how it is, how they make it. Formula One is so fast, right? It could actually lift off because of this airfoil section business. It just takes off. You cannot travel too fast without it flying off. So how do you keep it on the road? You keep it on the road by using similar technology of the airfoil section inverted upside down. It also has the technology of that pistons and Taqiyuddin's six-cylinder engine, right? So remember, to make technology like this, you are relying on a lot of things from history, and they evolve and they build upon each other until you reach a point of great advance. So my message first, for all those of you who are academics or are involved in some policy decisions, I think you ought to help us, to help you, and we all work together to make sure that this 1,000 years is no more missing from the mind and the conscience of people. It has to find a way into the schools, has to find its way into the culture and into the minds of people. We have to recognize that we are all human beings, and we are living in one village, and we have to respect one another, and we have to appreciate the discoveries and the inventions and the hard work of people. I'll give you an example. We heard something again from Charles when he talked about the camera, the little thing, and the telescope that we had to adjust it, which to do with the way the lenses, and he spoke about the optical lens that he was wearing. And that reminded me, you know, this optical lens, the lens and optics, one of the great fathers of optics, actually, originally from Basra. He went into Egypt in Cairo, and he lived there. The then ruler of Egypt didn't get on with him, so he put him in house arrest. When he was in prison, in house arrest, he developed some of the fantastic theories on how the eyes work, and the development of what we call the dark room, which later became known as the camera obscura, out of which the camera emerged, and so on. So, you know, you get these sort of people, great people, driven by curiosity, driven by trying to do something for humanity, and they are inventing things all the time, in many fields. So, again, not far away from here, by the way, I think it was somewhere near Urfa, you have this discovery. It's an automatic water feeding machine to animals. It's a machine, an animal comes, and as it touches there's a force plate, as it touches. And what happens is that as the animal comes, the tank opens, because if you keep the water open, exposed to the air, it will evaporate and it will disappear. There's no more water. So this machine, as animals come, they take water, but the water level in the tank stays the same. More than that, we discovered that this clever machine, it can distinguish between small animals and big animals. So when you have a big cow or horse comes, takes a lot of water, it stops. It doesn't allow the water level to go too far down, right? So it distinguishes between animals. The feeding of, you know, the saving of water, the care for animals, another invention, another innovation. So I'd like to sort of get this idea here, is that invention and innovation actually has been a very long time with us. I think the word innovation needs to be a bit defined. It has not been so as it is today, because it was not driven by money. Today, innovation is driven by money, right? In those days, it was driven by something else. Now, this is another fascinating, it's a fountain which changes shape by itself, automatic. And we discovered by looking at the manuscript and what's happening, that inside the fountain there was this machine inside. It's a control mechanism system. This is in the year 790, more than 1,000 years ago, where Banu Musa, right, from north of, from Al Jazeera here, between Tigris and the Euphrates, and then they went down to Baghdad, right? They developed this sort of worm and wheel arrangement so that the fountain works in that way. Now, alarm systems, this is one of about 40 alarm clocks work by water under, again, like a computer. I have expedited the sound so that it actually works faster. Right, I'm moving to the others. Now, there's another one. It shows you how innovation, action, inventions work. This machine here is for, I think in Turkish you call it abdes. You know, when you prepare for wudu, for the prayers, abdes. So you go there and you sit down because there are not many chairs. You find a guest comes to your house and you bring him this machine. This machine is about that high, and then you put it in front of the guest. And then what happens? The guest will tip the head, the beak of the peacock. And the peacock starts giving water. But it remembers exactly how many times it gives water, right? When you finish, it clicks, turns, and gives you a towel, hawli, right? And this is fascinating. It's like a computerized robot. And again, when we investigated how this actually works, it works like it's like a multiple flush system in the toilet, you know, the ones that we use, the flush system. This is a repeatable flush system, which is controlled by a siphon, and it works like that. It's like magic. This is more than 1,000 years ago. Right, then we spoke about the spectacles and Al-Hassani and Al-Haytham. There were many, you know, they brought paper, and it was invented in China, right? And then it was highly developed as it came to this part of the world. They even changed the chemistry of it. It used to be from pulp, you know, from cloves and so on, and then you boil them and make pulp. And then it was improved to a proper technology in Baghdad, and then it went to Cairo, Istanbul, and then into Europe and so on. The invention of the fountain pen. Have you ever thought of how this fountain pen works? You know, the ruler of Egypt, he said, what's all this bringing, you know, putting ink, you know, put the piece of pen in the ink pot, and then you have to work, and put the feather in there. He says, I want something that works automatically, right? It carries its own ink, but it should only work when it is asked to work. In other words, it does not drop anything. It only works when it is demanded. So they go there after 3 months. This is in Al-Nu'man's manuscript. They bring him this fountain pen, which works on capillary principle, where it takes the ink through capillary, and then it will not drop because of surface tension, but when you take away from it, it actually gives you the... It's fascinating stories, you know. You have a story everywhere around us, in our homes, in our hospitals, in our schools, in the streets, in the market, in the banks. There are many stories of people who have been inventive and innovative. These people, if they were around today, they would be thousands, and they would be black, white, yellow, all sorts of colors. And they would be male and female. They'll be young and they'll be old. Whole humanity would be celebrated in probably one of the biggest stadiums in the world. Take this lady, for instance. Has any of you thought of how did universities start? Well, I'm not expert in history, but I'm told that the earliest university today that we have today, the oldest university is called Al-Qarawiyyin University in the city of Fez in Morocco. More than 1,000 years old. Who has set this up? It was a lady who's called Fatima Al-Fihri. She wanted to build a mosque, but in this mosque, it's an educational mosque. She wanted to see teaching of all subjects, not only religious subjects to be taught in there. Her sister built a mosque not far away, but she built an educational institution within the mosque. And they say that when she started this project, right, she sort of used the shovel and started this. She project managed it. She was in charge of the whole management system and the funding, all right? And she said, nothing, no water, no material comes out, they come from outside this land. So they used the sand, the rocks, and the trees, and the water from the land to make that building. This map here has been drawn by a guy called Ali Majar. He was an Ottoman, but he was from Majar, meaning from Hungary. His name was Ali. Now, can you imagine? You look at the map that he has drawn of the world. This is below. This is the one underneath here. Right? And the one on the top is a satellite picture of the Earth. I was just wondering at that time in 1567, how on earth could he have drawn a map like this? He must have used thousands of maps before him, like Piraeus, the film that we have seen earlier, and others, to assemble them together. I was just wondering, was the guy on the moon when he had actually drawn this? So, again, you know, these people, they are good role models for us. It's hard work. When you have an aim, when you want to do something good for humanity, then you do something about it. You get inspired, and then you invent things. You know, you invent in medicine because you want to solve the problem of sick people. You want to improve the quality of their life. And you do engineering for the same reason. You do chemistry for the same reason. You do physics for the same reason. Pharmacy, botany, zoology, right? They even dissected the animals to try to, they studied what we call now genetic engineering, but they didn't call it genetic engineering. They call it this inheritance. They knew everything about these horses. In fact, you can get an Arab horse and find its family tree for about 100 years, right? Because of the way they had to sort of work on them and so on. Dissecting, examining what's inside the human body. I'm talking about 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago. And unfortunately, we don't know much about it, neither in our schools, neither in our public media. And studying birds. Birds used to be the postal system in the world. They're transmitting information from one city to another, from one country to the other. And they developed them. They looked after them. They made them intelligent. They know where to go. We don't have time to go too much. Again, studying underwater, marine life, classifying them, and looking at how the species interact with each other. In plants, when I looked at this manuscript, I thought, God, what's going on here? This is almost like genetic engineering, because they're taking from one plant and inculcating it to another plant to produce a third type. In fact, Ibn al-Baytar, who was in Cordoba, Spain, is known to have been able to, he can develop a grape tree with another grape tree. He plays around with them and something else, and he would produce a grape bundle, multicolor. Not black or green, mixed color. So, let's respect these people, right? Let's recognize them. And if you have time, try to find out why is it that these people have done all this work and yet there was no patent, right? And there was no money to reward them. That's really a secret that I just don't understand. Developing how to read, blind, to the technology over there. I found this depiction of people, books used to be large. And the guy is holding it like this. Why is he holding? Why didn't he sit down? I was thinking, why is that? I asked somebody, I said, how do you interpret this? He said, you know what? They like to study day and night. And the guy was so tired of sitting, right? He must move, so he was moving like this. He's reading while he's moving. Reading, learning, seeking knowledge, right? That was a drive there. I wanted to know about the secret. Why is it that these people have done? And I've been told a story. I'm not sure how correct it is, but somebody who is a historian, he said he has seen it and read about a great man called Al-Biruni, lived in North India. He has written 200 books, including mechanics and astronomy and so on. One of the fascinating things he's done, two fascinating things for me that I have learned about. One of them is he predicted using stars and astronomy, predicted the circumference of the Earth. How long is the circumference of the Earth? he wanted to do an experiment, because before him, Al-Hassani al-Haytham says, it's no use developing theories. You must test them against experiments. Experiment, this is why Al-Hassani al-Haytham is called the father of experimental science. Experiment, 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 right? And he also was known to have said, always doubt yourself, doubt your numbers, must check, must check. Now, Al-Biruni predicted the circumference of the Earth, but he wanted to do some experiment, and so there was an expedition. And they went there and they started pacing what he thought would be one degree angle subtending on the circumference. So by looking at how long this arc is, then you multiply by 360 degrees, then what you do is you get the length of the circumference of the Earth. Unfortunately, the number was not according to his predictions. So what he said, I want to do the experiment again. So he said, I'm sorry, I couldn't do it, because the waqif, the benefactor, the philanthropist, the one who funded it, has died. Oh, so there were people behind that then. There were people behind technology and behind science who are funding. So it wasn't just sort of one guy sitting by himself, right, inside a mosque or somewhere and is working by himself. There is a whole system behind. So when there was, therefore, the charity system was also funding this. And I was wondering about it. I said, if I now go to one of these great, rich Muslims or Arabs and so on, and, who believe in giving for charity, I say to him, excuse me, sir, I want to measure the circumference of the Earth. Can you give me some $10 million? Because that's how much it would cost now, probably. He'd probably say, are you crazy? Measuring the circumference, what has this to do with the charity? In those days, it had everything to do with charity, because they funded people like that. And you will find, if you go and study the waqf system, you're all business people here, or the sons of business people in here, a Porters Association. Can you please think about this? The charity system before that has produced one of the most glorious groups of scientists the world has ever known at that time, who have really been very beneficial to society, were funded out of their charity, right, out of their waqf system, either personal or through institutions. So that was Ibn al-Biruni for us. But al-Biruni had another story to tell, and that's the one I have been told. He said when he was dying at 92 years of age, he was sort of, they were dropping some water on his mouth because of the death. They told him, oh, by the way, there is this guy, they mentioned his name, come from another village. Some distance, long way from where he was, somewhere in Afghanistan and so on. So when he came, Biruni tried to lift himself up. He couldn't, he's a frail man. So he said to him, look here, man, I have been looking for you for 3 years. Thank God that you are here. Right? That's Biruni talking. So he said, yes. He said, I have been looking for you because I have a mas'ala. Mas'ala means I have a problem, and I know you have the solution of this. He says, yes. So, people were thinking, what is this mas'ala? What is this? Is this something, fatwa, of religious thing or something? He said, it was a mathematical problem. He asked him about the solution of some mathematical thing. So people were wondering, what is this? This fellow is on a deathbed, and he wants to know the solution of a mathematical problem? What kind of crazy man is this? So he turned around and told them, because he knew what they were thinking. He says, what shall I say to my Lord, my Maker, my Allah, when I meet Him and I refuse the opportunity to learn when He has given me? When I read this, I just could not believe that. How could such a mentality exist, that until the day, the minute he is dying, he is still wanting to learn? What kind of culture is this? What kind of spirit is this? Right? And I really wondered, about because I have been driven to get patents and get innovations and get this company and that company. We're being brought like wolves. We just want to make money and try to get. That's fine. Become innovative, become inventive, and so on. But just let's have a bit of thinking about why we're doing all this for. It has to have a higher level, not just the lower level. There are higher values and higher level, and I think these people we can learn from. We are not irtija'i people. We should not go and do exactly what they did, but we must make lessons from these people so that we can build a better future for ourselves and for the world. Right. Now then, there were women, not only men, women used to contribute. Like this lady here, Fatima al-Fihri, that we spoke about at the University of Al-Qarawiyyin. There's this lady not far away from here in the south of Turkey. She was in Aleppo. She used to make astrolabes. Astrolabes, in terms of satellites and the universe, this instrument is like the GPS system, a mechanical system that already has imprinted on it the locations and the movements of the stars printed on that, and then you use it by pointing at the star or a fixed point in the sky. It can tell you where you are, when is sunrise, when is sunset, right? And you can do your calculations. And it used to be in homes, in pockets, in the mosques, in institutions. And it was a lady. Now, we come to the 1001 inventions, because I heard somebody saying, Bimbir Ijad. We made an exhibition about these. And when it was in London, it was very exciting. We had many visitors in the Science Museum in London. And your Prime Minister, your present President, came when he was visiting London. They told him about this exhibition. When he came and found what we are doing here and so on, he caught me, he says, I want this to go to Istanbul. I said, look, it's going to New York, sir, I can't. He said, no, I want it in Istanbul. So anyway, we managed to reorganize our time and went to Istanbul. For 7 weeks in Istanbul, it was put in front of Hagia Sophia in Sultan Ahmed garden, right? And this is the tent. And look at the queues. Look at the queues, and look at young people were absolutely excited when they saw it. And when they, some of them were saying, let's also, then after that went to Arabia, it went to Kuala Lumpur, it went to New York Hall of Science, into Los Angeles, into California, Washington, and so on. So it was really very exciting. But the Turks, we have collected 20,000 letters. 450,000 Turks visited within 7 weeks. They visited the Bimbir Ijad, the 1001 Inventions exhibition. And some of them were crying in tears. They said, why have we not been told about this? Right? You see, the influence on these young people, they immediately believe that they are actually part of the modern civilization. It's not just America. We're part of NASA. Our grandfathers have contributed to NASA and to, not only now, Charles, who is doing this, and he's originally come from Beirut, right? That doesn't mean anything when you come from Beirut or anywhere, but actually demonstrates that given the proper environment, given the proper atmosphere, you can actually work. Given the freedom to think, right? Give value to humanity. Give value to the dignity of a person. And then you'll see whether women or men they can produce. So the idea here is that people were inspired because they think that they're actually not foreign to this civilization. It is not only European. We are all part of it as human beings. The Chinese are part of it. The Indians are part of it. The Turks are part of it. We all helped and contributed so that we take the satellite to Mars, right? This is how I see it. I am convinced of this. Maybe I am wrong, right? Why I like to say this to these young people? Because I don't want them to feel inferior. Oh, look at America. Oh, look at Europe. We are down. We are so. That's not right. Human beings are human beings. And they all are dignified, wherever they come from, right? And we contribute. It's like you have this big building. This big building is owned by maybe the university or by somebody. But you don't know who is the architect who built it. You don't know who did the plumbing and the pipes. You don't know who made the bricks, who made the painting, and so on. It's the same thing with technology today, which is now owned by the big powers in this world, right? Also, there were people who contributed into the algebra, into the chemistry, into the biology, into the engineering, into mathematics, into algebra. All that comes in. It's part and parcel of a lot of effort, thousands of years of man years and women years who have contributed to this. Now, we've got this book which is called Bin Bir Icat or 1001 Inventions. It is now been published by National Geographic, right? Which is really, it's selling out like hotcake. It really is a master. I'm sorry, I don't want to praise it too much because I'm the editor. But editor, editor means very little. It doesn't mean I'm the writer. It means I'm just sitting on the shoulders of those people who have done the work. I just use the name, right? Not really, I should not get the credit. The credit goes to the people who did all the work and the references and so on. And if there is also out of that book for kids, for young people, it's called 1001 Facts, extracted into something quite interesting and so on. Now, the third part of my story. I hope you're not bored. Now, we're... Thank you. Innovation has something to do with business. And we are here hosted by Exporters Association, right? Exporter, that means these are people with money, right? And they play with money and they use money to make technology, to make Turkey bigger and to help us live better life, get better food, good health and so on. That's the importance of export. But what is this business of money and financial system? I am no financial guy. I am not an economist. I'm just an ordinary person, studied engineering most of his life. Mind you, I have had some good patents. And by the way, I forgot to mention, there is something else in common between me and Charles. And that is that 40 or 35 years ago, I have worked using very high voltage and high current to discharge into coils to produce very high magnetic field so that we can shape a metal sheet. And that technology, which we worked on, I did it for my PhD and then carried on with it, was used on the Saturn V rocket, right, before it went off, to shape certain parts of it because you didn't want to hammer it with anything, right? You use the magnetic force to shape the metal without using contact, all right? So, where does that take us? Now, when you look at the financial system today, we use the word check. Right, check. We've looked up, well, where does this check come from? What does the word come? Apparently, it's something to do with suck, right? It's suck which was developed around this part of the world, and it's used in Arabic and so on. And then the financial system and how the people now control the world have got certain ethics. Not a very long story from here. This picture, by the way, are coins in UK, in the museums, which shows that King Offa, in the 8th century, he made golden coins. Of one side is about him, and the other side it says, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, indicating that at that time, in England, they have used this for some reason. So there was this business of using money and using checks and the trade and so on. So what about trade? I asked around so I can make my story to you. I came up with this. Some people tell me that the word tajir in Arabic meaning businessman or a businesswoman. Tajir, yes? Is that right? Tajir. Now, it is made out of 4 letters in Arabic. Ta, a, j, r. Tajir. Right? Apparently, please, you have to investigate this. I am told about this. I am not historian of the subject. But some reliable people tell me this when Islam came to Arabia, they changed the meaning of this. Ta is from taqwa, meaning God conscious, right? Tajir, businessman, tajir, God consciousness is taqwa, the ta from taqwa. That means you are taqwa, ya taqi, all right? My father's name is Taqi. Right. And then the next letter is A, from amanat, meaning trustworthy. You don't cheat other people. You take their money, you reserve the money. You don't cheat. You are ameen, amanat. The other one is courage, jasarat, jim, jasarat. If you are a good businessman, you must be brave. You cannot make decisions without bravery. Risk. Business is risk. And risk requires jasarat. Right? Okay? And then the last one, ra, is from rahmat. You have to be merciful. You don't become like a wolf. Take the wealth of other people. You hoard, and so the prices go up. And things like that. So there is taqwa, there is amanat, and there is jasarat, and there is rahmat. Now you young people, young entrepreneurs, my children, my young brothers and sisters, can you please put this in your mind? Because I think that the world is suffering from the present financial system. You get a guy from New York, somewhere I heard 4 years ago, he has stolen $5 billion, one person. Madef or somebody called, I've forgotten his name. How is this possible? We are creating wolves in the banks and in big industries and big corporates and so on. And the world is suffering. We need to have this spirit. Now this tells me, the guy who told me about this, he says to me, you know, these people, those days when they used to have these trades and they have these characteristics, this is the reason why Malaysia, Indonesia, and most of these large parts of these countries, they became Muslim, because they were so impressed with the behavior of these people. They were very nice people. So the business people, they are actually the ambassadors of the country where they come from. When you Exporters Association, my good ladies and good gentlemen, you are the ambassadors to Turkey. The way you behave with the outside world will reflect on the character of your culture and your people. Well, I think that I have made a case here. One is that we can derive lessons from history. I don't say we have to go back and do the same exactly what these people did. We can't. You have to build upon with them. That some things in the history can be very useful for us today, because they can actually give us some steering of what is right and what is wrong, and why we're doing things. Why are we wanting to innovate? Why do we want to invent? And so on. These have higher values in them. If you can do them, if you can acquire this high value, then you will become a great person. If you don't, you can still be a good person. You can still do it for money, you can do it for patenting, you can do all this, is fine. But I'd like to have this extra edge where you have value. You have a human value in research and in the development and so on. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I am so pleased that I have been here. I hope I have made you enjoy the lecture.